Hi, my name's Erin Perry, and today I'll be taking you through the process of creating porcini mushroom risotto. Unfortunately, porcini mushrooms aren't in season right now, so we will be substituting those for shiitake mushrooms. So it's more of a shiitake mushroom risotto. But porcini mushroom risotto is a classic Italian dish, and it's filled with creamy, earthy, and that very rich mushroom flavor. It's very popular in Italy. This recipe really stood out to me because I'm a huge fan of mushrooms, and I love that flavor. I love the texture, and I also am a big fan of risotto, so I was really excited to make this and step out of my comfort zone a little bit. But yeah, we're at Meijer right now, so let's go get some ingredients. The first thing we're getting is shiitake mushrooms. We need to get 2 because you need 7 ounces. Next thing we need is yellow onions. We'll put that in a cut. Next thing we're getting is a garlic. We need 1 clove for this recipe. Next thing we're getting is Parmesan cheese. We gotta grate that into the risotto. I also just picked up some chicken broth, some white wine, and some extra virgin olive oil. And now we just gotta get our rice, and then we're all set. Here's our rice. All right, we have finished with all of the shopping. We are heading to checkout, and then I'll see you guys in the kitchen. All right, now that we have made it back to the kitchen, it's time to start to prep so we can start cooking. We're gonna start cutting up our onions and the mushrooms, and I gotta cut up some Parmesan cheese, and then we can start cooking. So let's get started. Here are our vegetables all prepped and ready. We have our onion, our garlic, our Parmesan cheese, and our shiitake mushrooms. All right, now that we have all of our stuff prepped out, we're gonna begin cooking. Our first step is to get a medium pan. We're gonna turn the heat to medium, and we need to add 2 tablespoons of our olive oil into the pan. All right, there we go. And then we are gonna add our smashed garlic clove into the pan, and then we let that sit until our garlic clove is close to looking very golden-y. We don't want it to burn, so once it's golden, you're gonna take that off, and then we'll go to the next step. It has now been about 2 to 3 minutes, and our garlic is looking golden. So we are now going to remove that, and you can put that to the side. And for our next step, we are going to turn the heat to medium-high. And then we are going to add our mushrooms into the pan. And we're gonna let these cook for about 10 minutes. And you need to consistently stir this. Keep an eye on them until they get cooked and kind of soft. So we're just gonna watch this, and then we'll go on to the next step. About 5 minutes into cooking our mushrooms, our next step is we are going to add salt, 2 pinches of salt into the mushrooms, and keep stirring them frequently. Now that our mushrooms are done cooking, we're going to remove them from the heat and set them off to the side. There we go. Boom. And there we are, looking yummy. And now we're gonna move on to sauteing the onions. So for sauteing the onions, we're gonna start off with taking our olive oil again. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons. There we go. And now we are going to add our onions. And we're gonna reduce the heat back to medium. And these are gonna cook for about 3 to 2 minutes until they're golden brown. All right, for our next step, we are going to now add our rice into our pan with our onions. we're gonna stir this around and get that oil all coated onto the rice. We're gonna let these cook for about 2 minutes. We're gonna get just a little bit of like a browning on the sides of the rice. And then once we see that browning, we're gonna add our 1/2 cup of our white wine. And then we're gonna let that cook for a little bit until the white wine absorbs. And then we add our 1 cup of chicken broth. So let's get these browning, and I'll be back when I add the wine. Right now that it's been about 2 minutes, we're gonna add our white cooking wine into the pan. And we're gonna let that absorb. Once that absorbs, we're gonna add our 1 cup of chicken broth. It's gonna take probably about 2 to 3 minutes for this to absorb. But once it's all fully absorbed, we'll add that chicken broth in. Now that the white wine has absorbed into the rice, we are going to add our broth in here. We're gonna let it sit until all that broth absorbs, and then we're gonna add a 2nd cup, but we're only gonna add half. Then we're gonna wait a little bit, a couple more minutes, like 3 to 5-ish, until it all absorbs again, and then we'll add that rest of that half. Alright, so let's add this broth. And we gotta consistently stir this so it doesn't stick to the pan, because that would then burn your rice. But let this sit and just keep kind of stirring it, and then we'll be back to add the rest of the cups. Okay, here's what our rice is looking like. It's time to add the 2nd cup of broth, and we're gonna let that sit until it fully absorbs again. And then we're gonna add another cup of broth. I just added the 1/2 cup of chicken broth to the rice again. And we're gonna let this absorb, and then we're gonna come back and add our mushrooms and let that cook together. And then we're gonna add that 2nd cup or 1/2 cup of chicken broth. Now that the broth is absorbed into the rice, we are going to add 7 ounces of mushrooms that we cooked up earlier. And we're gonna stir this around for about 5 minutes and let them cook some more. Now that the mushrooms have been cooking in with the rice, we're gonna add our 2nd 1/2 cup of broth into it. And we're gonna let that fully absorb into the rice, and then we're gonna remove it from the heat. Once the chicken broth is all absorbed into the pan, we're gonna remove it from the heat, and we're gonna add a tablespoon of butter. And then we're gonna just gradually stir and mix in our Parmesan cheese. Once the cheese and the butter is all melted in, it should be creamy and gooey and not stiff. But here's the final result, and let's plate it up and garnish it with some parsley. Alright, I just threw some of the risotto into a bowl, and we're gonna finish it off by garnishing it with some dry parsley. And now let's try it. I just topped it off with some parsley, and here's the finished plating. Now that we have finished our recipe of porcini mushroom risotto, but actually more of shiitake mushroom risotto, let's give it a try. I am very excited. Let's get some parsley in there. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's so creamy and the flavor is all there. Wow. This is hands down the best thing I have ever made. I give this a 10 out of 10. This is my friend Kelsey. She's gonna be trying my recipe for me. I enjoyed it a lot, so tell me how you feel about it.
Dude,
isn't it good?
that is fire.
It's so good. The flavor is so there, right? Like
it's so there, and I don't even like mushroom.
Really?
And that is fire.
Wow. Times
So there
have
you have it.
changed. That's the end of my video. Thank you for watching. I really had a great time and will definitely be making this recipe again. And it wasn't even that hard to make. It was just new. But now that I know how to do it, I am totally prepared for the next time I make this. But I hope you try the recipe. I totally recommend it. And I had a lot of fun. Thank you.